people that bashed him will be eating their words this year.
Pretty heavily favored to be a first-round pick, minus 400 earlier this week. But that's not the surprise.
If you're drafting J.J. McCarthy in the first half of the first round, you clearly believe not only is he a starter, he's going to be your starter for years to come. But
a popular bet was under 3.5 wide receivers in the first round.
The tape doesn't lie, baby.
Only on SportsGrid.
Quotes coming out about Embiid. Oh, he's a warrior. You'll never get him off the court. You're just telling me he's an injury. He's one slip and fall away from what's not seeing him anymore in this series.
I would have sat him because there was only 1 day between the two games. It's 2 days between games 2 and games 3, and it's 2 days between games 3 and game 4.
Betting above the rim. Only on SportsGrid.
Game Time had 35 in the first half, Cam. And then, of course, he did not have another point the rest of the game.
Lillard's, it's playoff game time. This guy will show up. He will hit shots. Indiana, you better respond here because I'll tell you, that's a bad loss. We were wrong, Carver. Like, hey, I was on the Pelicans. This game, I lost.
Pharrell Coast to Coast. Only on
Welcome to hour number 3, live right here on this Thursday on the early line on SportsGrid. He is Donnie right side. I am Ben Stevens. We appreciate you joining us all across the SportsGrid network on this Thursday morning. A triple header of NBA playoff action to preview in this third and final hour. We'll go around Major League Baseball as well. Some action on the ice in the Stanley Cup postseason. And, of course, it is draft night. Round number 1 of the 2024 NFL Draft tonight in the Motor City in Detroit. And we wanted to hear from the people. We do that now in Fade the Public. There are no guarantees, especially in the world of sports betting or the NFL draft, or when you marry the two DRS and betting the NFL draft. But Caleb Williams at minus 30,000 to be the number 1 overall selection tonight by the Chicago Bears is as close as you will get. So we wanted to hear from the public, who's the second best quarterback in this 2024 draft class? Drake May, Jaden Daniels, J.J. McCarthy, or other. A couple of spicy replies that included Caleb Williams, but most of the public, more than 50% DRS, saying Jaden Daniels at more than 50% is the second best quarterback in the 2024 NFL Draft.
Yeah, coming into the draft, like the intrigue of who do we think is going to be the best pro and prospect, I mean, it'll play out on the field. Of course it will over the next couple of years. But if you're looking just at pure talent entering into the draft, if you're taking away Caleb Williams, it's got to be Jaden Daniels, because you saw the year that he had at LSU doing both with his arm and also with his legs, which is a deadly combination. And in today's NFL, being able to move the pocket and manipulate the pocket with your legs is one thing. To be able to pick up first downs on 3rd and 9, that's another thing. And Jaden Daniels can certainly do that. So I do agree with the public here, Ben. 50%, just over, I should say, 50% of the vote coming in on Jaden Daniels being the second best quarterback in the 2024 class. I do agree with that assessment today.
And best is different than will he go second overall, of course. But as of this moment, Jaden Daniels is a minus 950 favorite to be the second overall pick. Market actually moving slightly, but still minus 750 for Jaden Daniels to be that second overall pick tonight, made more than likely by the Washington Commanders. That small caveat as well as we break down the NFL draft from here on out. If Jaden Daniels goes second and you cash the ticket for Jaden Daniels to be the number 2 overall pick, the Commanders don't necessarily have to make that selection just to know in terms of your betting odds. But when you look at the 2023 Heisman Trophy winner, he threw for more than 3,100 passing yards a season ago in the Bayou. He had 918 yards on the ground, most by a quarterback last year in all of CFB. He is the only, or he's one of two quarterbacks, rather, in a single season to throw for 3,000 passing yards and run for 8,000. That is how good he was last year in his Heisman Trophy winning campaign, and why the prospect of Jaden Daniels is so exciting at the next level in the National Football League. So let's start with the quarterback conversation quickly, because I do have some points to make about the offensive linemen that might hear their name called in the round, or in the first round tonight in Detroit. For Caleb Williams, minus 30,000, be the first overall pick made by the Bears. Jaden Daniels, minus 750 to go number 2 overall. Drake May, greater than a $3 favorite to be that third overall pick. And J.J. McCarthy is a minus 280 favorite to be a top 5 selection. Do you think, Donnie, we see all 4 quarterbacks hear their names called in the first 5 picks?
I do. I absolutely do. And I know people are looking at maybe moving up to 6 there, but I don't think you can wait. If that is your guy, what is the chances that, like, you know what? I'm only going the 6 here, Ben. I won't move to 5 or even get into that 4 spot. We'll wait. And then that guy is gone. You basically have ruined all those years of draft knowledge and all those weeks and weeks and weeks of preparation leading up to the draft, only because you were haggling over a 3rd round pick that could turn into a 2nd round pick in 2027. Don't do that to yourself. If you believe a quarterback is going to be a game changer for your franchise, what's the difference at this point? Go up and get that player. I do believe in the top 5 we're getting 4 quarterbacks. Yes,
I believe so as well. And oh, by the way, some markets moving on this morning of the NFL draft. J.J. McCarthy is now the favorite to be the 5th overall pick at plus 250. Now, the Chargers draft number 5 overall. Despite Jim Harbaugh being the head coach of the Bolts, they're not taking J.J. McCarthy with Justin Herbert already on the roster. Would Jim be more inclined then to hear from a team that wants to move up to get the favorite quarterback he has ever seen? Maybe so. And again, the Minnesota Vikings at a plus 170 number still remain the favorites to draft J.J. McCarthy. Minnesota, though, drafts 11th overall at this moment. The Vikes would have to trade up. 2 other quarterbacks could go in the first round tonight with a lot of steam on the draft stock of Michael Penix Jr. There has been some conversations. He might go as high as 6th overall to the New York Giants tonight. I doubt that, but he was the nation's leading passer a year ago and led UW into that national championship game against McCarthy and Michigan. When you look at Michael Penix Jr., DRS, and Bo Nix, do you think both will be first-round picks?
I do think both will be first-round picks, and as we stated earlier, getting that 5th year, that extra year to try to evaluate the quarterback position. And also, those guys did a lot of great things in college football. I would say the question mark overall is, like, based on what we saw out of Michael Penix, yes, we see the injuries. He's a little bit older. I get that. But it wasn't like, hey, man, those injuries really slowed him down, Ben, 4.9 40. Like, the dude still blazed a path on the 40-yard dash and also put up monster numbers and was a game, or should I say a win away from being probably the Heisman Trophy winner on the season if it wasn't for that tremendous season that we saw out of Daniels. So I don't know, like, not being an evaluator of quarterbacks, obviously, but before the season started, like, of course Michael Penix is going to be a first-round draft pick. Heck, he might even be a top 5 pick. So I'm actually kind of stunned here that we're talking about a borderline first-round pick based on what he did in college football, the amount of yards and the talent that he does add. You want to talk about a pure passer in college football? It was Michael Penix. How do you win in the NFL, Ben? How about being a pure passer? We'll see what happens, but I do think he is a first-round draft pick, and I do think he goes ahead of Bo Nix.
Minus 400 right now for Penix Jr. to be a first-round pick, but still plus 1,700 to be drafted in the top 10. If Penix Jr. is a first-rounder, more than likely we see an over of 4.5 quarterbacks taken in the first round. That is the prop on the FanDuel Sportsbook, and the over has the hefty juice at minus 440. 9.5 is the over-under prop for the number of offensive linemen we expect to be drafted in the first round tonight. And the over's got the hefty juice around a $2 number at minus 192. Now, the first O-lineman off the board as of this moment is expected to be Joe Alt, the outstanding offensive tackle out of Notre Dame. To be the first O-lineman drafted, it's minus 195, but Alabama's J.C. Latham has made a late charge. I have seen mock drafts that have the Crimson Tide's O-lineman in front of Alt, who has always been presumed DRS to be that first O-lineman off the board.
Yeah, 3 words you can use here. Control, Alt, delete here. That's the guy that you got to go with number 1 because he will delete defensive ends on his way to supremacy. And by the way, it's an unsexy pick, Ben, but you want to talk about winning championships here? Yes, we know you need your great quarterback, but you can never fault a team and players alike, right? Fans, we sit back and watch like, come on, man, you drafted a lineman here when that wide receiver was on the board. That's how you win in the NFL. So the team that gets Joe Alt is like, oh, look at all these superstars around us. No, he is going to be a superstar, and you can be an anchor for 10 to 15 years. That guy's going to be a steal wherever he goes.
Absolutely so. And we have seen O-linemen, both interior and, of course, your blindside blockers on the edge, start to get paid. And when you look at top 10 picks, Alt is minus 1,500. Latham now minus 140. Olufashinu out of Penn State is plus 340. You're going to see guys like Tali Fuaga out of Oregon State go early. Troy Fa'utanu out of Washington go early as well. It is going to be a big night for the big hog mollies, and I would bet the over of 9.5 O-linemen, even at minus 192, with at least 10 in the first round. Daily basis. Craig Mish joins us up next.
People that bashed him will be eating their words this year.
Pretty heavily favored to be a first-round pick, minus 400 earlier this week. But that's not the surprise.
If you're drafting J.J. McCarthy in the first half of the first round, you clearly believe not only is he a starter, he's going to be your starter for years to come. But
a popular bet was under 3.5 wide receivers in the first round.
The tape doesn't lie, baby.
Only on SportsGrid.
So I turned it off. I got my sweat done, and I'm leaving. I'm taking my money. I'm going home, and I don't want to talk to you the rest.
Oh, yes!
There it is.
6-3. Catch the over. The over is hit. The Padres are our heroes.
That's how we end the show. That's how we end the show.
Oh, what? Let's just sign off. Let's just call it a show.
In-game live, prime time, only on SportsGrid.
I think they're looking for a space where they can be comfortable, perhaps make some NIL money in the process, but be better set up long-term as opposed to it being 1 year jumping around.
You want to kind of get your core players that have been there a couple of years, and then go get the high-profile recruit and then supplement at the transfer portal.
Inside the transfer portal, only on SportsGrid.
Game Time had 35 in the first half, Cam. And then, of course, he did not have another point the rest of the game.
Lillard's, it's playoff game time. This guy will show up. He will hit shots. Indiana, you better respond here because I'll tell you, that's a bad, bad, bad loss. We were wrong, Carver. Like, hey, I admit, I was on the Pelicans. This game, I lost.
Pharrell Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid.
Live right here on the early line on this Thursday on SportsGrid. I am Ben Stevens. Donnie right side is on the right. And the man in the middle, of course, is Craig Mish, our MLB insider across the SportsGrid network, the host of Newswire. That starts at 11 a.m. Eastern time. Craig, as always, we appreciate you joining us here on the daily basis.
Yeah, I know there's a lot of focus, of course, on the NFL draft tonight, but boy, exciting stuff last night in the NBA. I mean, you can imagine where I am here in South Florida. Heat fans are getting ready, feeling like there's another run here coming. I don't know. I guess we'll see.
And Craig, they need it because the Miami Marlins, as you know, are 6-20. I didn't mean to take your optimistic statement and make it a little bit more dim.
Marlins are running.
Yeah, I really did kind of poo-poo that. That was a little bit rude of me.
I mean, you really, you go on vacation. You're like this big shot, and then you come back, and you just come back swinging like you're Dolph Lundgren or something.
That's unfortunate. I'm sorry I did that. Let's focus on the rest of the Major League Baseball slate on this Thursday. Big win for the Dodgers yesterday in the nation's capital, 11-2 over the Nats. And Yoshi Yamamoto gets the start today for the Dodgers against the Nationals as well. LA, as often is the case, Craig, especially against teams that are not very good, booked as a hefty favorite, greater than a $2 price. What have you seen out of Yamamoto to start this season? His first in MLB, of course, with the Dodgers.
Yeah, some inconsistency. I think the Cubs' Imanaga has clearly been the overseas star to begin between the two of them. But look, I think in the end, Yamamoto will be fine. It's just going to take some time, I guess, for him, as opposed to how it has for Imanaga, who's been one of the best pitchers in baseball thus far. As far as Washington is concerned this afternoon, they're going through it, Ben. Like they're going to have very bright days coming. They have a lot of young players in the minor leagues in a year or two that you're going to see. They're a little light on the pitching in the future, so they're going to have to sort of figure that out either through the draft or international free agency or just general free agency. They gave Strasburg a lot of money for nothing, Patrick Corbin a lot of money for nothing, and they're sort of eating that right now. And on top of it, Washington's playing without Lane Thomas, who's one of their better contributors. So, hard for me to see a scenario where Washington goes on a run, but the records, Ben, are more or less the same, the Dodgers and the Nationals at this stage of the season. So it just goes to show you what April really is.
Bats came out to play yesterday for sure for the Dodgers. We'll see if that does continue today. But if we take a look here at the NL Rookie of the Year odds, a couple of Cubs showing up here. That's Imanaga, Michael Busch, who's been fantastic here early on, and Pete Crow Armstrong. If we're shaping up this market, what are the chances that it's not a pitcher in your mind here, Craig Mitch, in the National League to win the Rookie of the Year?
Well, I mean, you have several that have the opportunity. Jared Jones has been fantastic. If Pittsburgh continues to play well, he's in the equation. I mentioned Imanaga. I definitely think he's in the equation as well. It doesn't hurt to be on a good team. I would say that's a possibility too. The player that I really liked before the year, he hasn't hit as many home runs as he did overseas, is Jung-Ho Lee on San Francisco. But he's a really exciting player. He's like a gap-to-gap guy, and you guys know this. In that park in San Francisco, it's just really hard to hit home runs. You have to be a special player. Soler is hitting home runs now for them, but in the past, I mean, you think about the lack of power that they've had there. It's just very hard to replicate a Bonds or a Jeff Kent or somebody like that. So I think it's a fair question, Donnie. It does seem to me that one of those pitchers could end up winning it. I guess my comment on the NL to this point would be to say, outside of the start that Imanaga has had, and let's give Jared Jones credit too, outside of those two, has anybody really separated themselves right now? So I think we're kind of, have a long way to go here. But for me, it would not be Yamamoto at the top. I probably would try somebody else. And I think another story to tell here is the fact that you have Skeens and Pete Crow Armstrong without playing. I know PCA, he got called up yesterday. But without playing a single game, they're still very much in the mix. It tells you that no one's really separated themselves.
Paul Skeens, the number one overall pick of this past summer's draft, of course, won a national championship with LSU and has been incredible in Indianapolis in AAA already. Maybe an impending call-up to the bigs, and that's why you see the 18-1 price. Now we go to the American League West, where only one team, Craig, is above 500. It's the reigning World Series champs. That is the Texas Rangers, and they're one game above 500 at 13-12. The Mariners are an even 500 now at 12-12, and these two teams face off today in Arlington. Seattle, a slight road favorite. What do you make of this divisional duel and what it means for the American League West as a whole?
Yeah, it's a day for me where I just don't love the slate. I looked up and down before the show, and I was trying to find a few things, maybe some player props or anything else. Thursdays and Wednesdays in baseball are my least favorite. It's my favorite to watch because there's games going on in the afternoon. It's my least favorite to handicap because there's so many other things in play. It's getaway day for a lot of these teams. If you've ever watched a Thursday baseball game that's played before the evening, it seems like these players just swing at the first pitch a lot of unders. It's usually the way that I would tend to go. I would go that way in this game as well. Seattle has got to get it going a little bit more than they have. Texas, I think, will be there in the end. I saw Scherzer's on his way back soon, so that's good news for them. Maybe DeGrom is a second-half contributor, but we're in the end of April here. We're going to start to figure out these two teams pretty soon.
Craig, this is next game we're going to talk about. Not even really a handicap here. It's the Chicago White Sox and it's the Minnesota Twins. Woods Richardson on the mound here for Minnesota. Soroka for the White Sox. Minnesota's a minus 215 favorite right now at home. But the question is here, what's up with the White Sox? Are we looking for changes in players? Or are we looking for changes in manager? Because this is one of the worst starts we've ever seen. And I don't know if it even gets any better. How can it get worse? I don't know. But who knows what's going to happen in the next, 2-3 weeks with this team?
Well, I mean, Donnie, they fired their president of baseball operations last year. They fired their GM, and those were the individuals who hired Pedro Grifol, who I like very much, to be the manager. But I think we got to call it what it is. Very few managers survive 100-loss seasons. It's very hard to do. I know Brandon Hyde did in Baltimore, and now he's being rewarded for sticking around there and winning some games. Yeah. But they don't have a lot to sell. It's a team that needs to kind of go in a rebuild, but it's really hard to do in that city because they just won't tolerate it in a big market like Chicago. There's just no other choice, though, Donnie, right now for it. Pounding unders has been the way to go with the White Sox because, simply put, even if their pitching is not good enough, they're on a historical pace for scoring runs and hitting home runs. They're just not doing any of it with Luis Robert out.
Yeah.
So I just feel like over 162 games, if you're hitting 55% on the under of the White Sox, just close your eyes and do it probably for the rest of the year because their pitching is actually it's bad. It's not horrible.
Craig, we'll see you on Newswatch in just about 40 minutes. Thanks very much. More of the early line next.
People that bashed him will be eating their words this year.
Pretty heavily favored to be a first-round pick, minus 400 earlier this week. But that's not the surprise.
If you're drafting J.J. McCarthy in the first half of the first round, you clearly believe not only is he a starter, he's going to be your starter for years to come. But
a popular bet was under 3.5 wide receivers in the first round.
The tape doesn't lie, baby.
Only on SportsGrid.
So I turned it off. I got my sweat done, and I'm leaving. I'm taking my money. I'm going home, and I don't want to talk to you the rest.
Oh, yes!
There it is.
6-3. Cast the over. The over is hit. The Padres are our heroes.
That's how we end the show. That's how we end the show.
Oh, what? Let's just sign off. Let's just call it a show.
In-game live, prime time, only on SportsGrid.
I think they're looking for a space where they can be comfortable, perhaps make some NIL money in the process, but be better set up long-term as opposed to it being 1 year jumping around.
You want to kind of get your core players that have been there a couple of years, and then go get the high-profile recruit and then supplement at the transfer portal.
Inside the transfer portal, only on SportsGrid.
Game Time had 35 in the first half, Cam. And then, of course, he did not have another point the rest of the game.
Lillard's, it's playoff game time. This guy will show up. He will hit shots. Indiana, you better respond here because I'll tell you, that's a bad, bad, bad loss. We were wrong, Carver. Hey, I admit, I was on the Pelicans. This game, I lost.
Pharrell Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid.
Live right here on this Thursday, but not just Thursday, draft day. The NFL draft in 2024 starts tonight with the opening round in the Motor City in Detroit. We give you some draft best bets right here, right now, and some rapid fire predictions. I am locked and loaded, DRS, in terms of the NFL draft. I know you don't love to bet the odds, But when you follow it like we do here, through the 2-month span of the end of a season, through the combine, pro days, draft cycle, and all the changing markets that you see in the final 2 days before the NFL draft actually begins, I think there are profits to be had. We'll break down a few here in this segment.
Yeah, and also, this is one of those few markets where, like, it's not handicapping a game. Like, well, let me call coaches, let me ask behind the scenes, like, all right, look, I know this is going to happen. We don't know that. But this is one of those marketplaces that's so interesting because it's not played out on the field. It's based on what information you have and how good that actual information is. So you can legitimately spend a lot of time on the draft and put the odds in your favor just about how connected or how plugged in or just paying attention to simple tea leaves that you're reading from some of these general managers, coaches, and organizations. It's a fun time, and market manipulation, it's been around for a long time. And in the draft, there's no more market manipulation than what's going to take place probably from now till the draft tonight.
And that's a beautiful statement, DRS, because I completely agree. These odds are not quantifiable. You are doing things based off rumors, reports, what you are hearing, what you are seeing, and what you anticipate to happen. But it's not a 5.5-point spread for an NBA playoff game. You're betting on the whims of decision makers in an NFL front office. So quarterbacks always are the focus. Quarterbacks tonight in round number 1 are going to be one of the main narratives. How many will we see? 3 times in the modern era of the NFL draft in the 7-round structure we have seen on an annual basis since 1997. We have seen 5 QBs taken in round number 1, but that's the max. Could we see 6 tonight? So for a round 1 quarterback bet, what gets your attention?
Oh, by the way, I know where you're going. I'm going to talk about yours in a second, too, once you give that. But I'm just going to have some fun with this. Bo Nix to the Broncos at a plus 175 price. We're looking at a football team that needs a quarterback and a future franchise guy, but not necessarily has enough draft capital to get up into that top 3 or 4 or 5 picks to get those. Sean Payton is a quarterback guru. If you can get a guy like Bo Nix in round number 1 and stash him for a year or 2, teach him the ropes, that's one of those situations that when you come out of cap hell, which technically you're in after the Russell Wilson deal didn't work in your favor and you basically lost a third of your salary cap, I think Bo Nix to the Broncos, and this has no inside input, anything for the Denver Broncos or a ton of research involved. It just makes sense to me. And you take a look at that, plus 175 here for Bo Nix to go to the Broncos.
DRS, I completely agree. I bet it as such just a couple of days ago in New Jersey. Bo Nix draft position under 35.5. It is now 32 and a hook. The first position the Broncos select to be a quarterback at minus 110. Because if you follow the tea leaves, Denver is the favorite to draft Bo Nix. They do not have a second-round pick. So unless it happens in the 3rd round or Denver trades completely out of the 1st and they have the 12th overall selection right now, I don't know how they get Bo Nix, which leads to my round 1 quarterback look. Over under 4.5 quarterbacks taken. Some of these draft position props are so heavily juiced. I wish there was an alt because I would go alt with plus money to the over of 5.5. It's just not listed at this current time. A trade team to watch. Who do you think could trade early and often tonight in the NFL draft?
Yeah, team I want to watch is the Jets. But real quick on that pick, they're over 4.5 quarterbacks at minus 330. I love that. And I actually think today it's way higher on the juice because we are expecting as Ben. Yeah, there you go. So Ben gave out a minus 330 pick. Trust me, if that wins, you're not going to care about that. I think that's wonderful value at the minus 330 price. But let's get back to a team to watch. It's the Jets at the 10th overall pick. You want to keep Aaron Rodgers healthy. If his guy is still on the board or maybe one of those magical wide receivers slips down the board, I look for the Jets to possibly move up and grab an absolute game changer to go along with Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah, I think the team to trade still could be the Arizona Cardinals. I know what they might look to do tonight. They have the 4th overall pick. It could be that movement for a J.J. McCarthy, or maybe right behind them, the L.A. Chargers at 5th overall. Position of Mr. Irrelevant, DRS, fire off. What is it?
Give me that QB, man. You don't want to have to go into free agency shortly after the draft and get your quarterback. Just draft a guy last in the draft and put him on your football team.
For me, it's a kicker, it's a punter, or it's a long snapper at 20-1. But Mr. Irrelevant doesn't go off the board until Saturday afternoon in day number 3. We'll have some more first-round thoughts later in this show because I've got some bets to rifle through. When we're back, we go on the ice around the National Hockey League, the Stanley Cup postseason next.
people that bashed him will be eating their words this year.
Pretty heavily favored to be a first-round pick, minus 400 earlier this week. But that's not the surprise.
If you're drafting J.J. McCarthy in the first half of the first round, you clearly believe not only is he a starter, he's going to be your starter for years to come. But
A popular bet was under 3.5 wide receivers in the first round.
The tape doesn't lie, baby.
Only on SportsGrid.
So I turned it off. I got my sweat done, and I'm leaving. Taking my money. I'm going home, and I don't want to talk to you for the rest.
Oh, yes!
There it is.
6-3. Catch the over. The over is hit. The Padres are our heroes.
That's how we end the show. That's how we end the show.
Oh, what? Let's just sign off. Let's just call it a show.
In-game live, prime time, only on SportsGrid.
I think they're looking for a space where they can be comfortable, perhaps make some NIL money in the process, but be better set up long term as opposed to it being 1 year jumping around.
You want to kind of get your core players that have been there a couple of years, and then go get the high-profile recruit, and then supplement at the transfer portal.
Inside the transfer portal, only on SportsGrid.
Game Time had 35 in the first half, Cam. And then, of course, he did not have another point the rest of the game.
Lillard's, it's playoff game time. This guy will show up. He will hit shots. Indiana, you better respond here because I'll tell you, that's a bad, bad, bad loss. We were wrong, Carver. Like, hey, I admit, I was on the Pelicans. This game, I lost.
Pharrell Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid.
Stanley Cup playoff action to break down for you here live on this Thursday on the early line on SportsGrid. It's Ben, it's Donnie. He can talk puck with the best of them, but none better than Joe Madden joining us live right here on this Thursday on the early line as well. Joe, thank you so much for taking the time bright and early on this Thursday to look at the action on the ice.
I'm excited. The ice has been absolutely incredibly hot. We saw all of the road teams win those 3 games last night. So we're in for some shakeups tonight, most definitely.
A triple header last night where the final game of the night out in Edmonton was the best. The Kings win in overtime as a pretty hefty road ice underdog against the Edmonton Oilers. Joe, as we were getting ready for the show today, the Oilers were a minus 190 favorite last night against LA. I was going to ask you the question, how commanding of a 2-0 lead is this for Edmonton for only Los Angeles to have different ideas in OT? What did last night's win for the Kings do for your outlook in this opening round series?
Well, you look at the Edmonton Oilers and they can't hold a lead, and the LA Kings are just fighting in each and every one of these games. The Oilers' main problem there is in goal. Skinner isn't the level of goalie that they need to be able to beat a team. Now, Connor McDavid's phenomenal. We saw him with the 5 assists in game 1, but last night they were able to limit him, and we saw Cam Talbot really stand up in net. I still do think this series goes deep, but Edmonton falling apart last night in that game, they needed to take that back to LA 2-0. Now going into LA 1-1 with Kopitar with that phenomenal overtime goal is not a good situation for Edmonton. It's going to be a struggle for them to take this series. Still ability to do so if they give more support to Skinner and net.
I'll tell you what's incredible, too. You take a look at Connor McDavid, how dominant he can be, and just talk to you about it in handicapping terms. Anytime point in a game, which a point a game is pretty incredible for an NHL player. This is the playoffs, which should be even harder to get points. He's a minus 650 price yesterday to get an anytime point. Obviously, that cashes in, but certainly the guy is absolute dominance. Talking about dominance last night, Joe, a team that's no stranger to making runs to the Stanley Cup final, that's the Golden Knights. A 3-1 victory on the road over the Stars. They take a commanding 2-0 series lead over the Stars. Incredible stuff out of the Golden Knights.
Yeah, and you look at the Dallas Stars here, they needed a home win. And not having a home win going back to the Fortress in Vegas, I is done. The Vegas Golden Knights really turn it back on for the playoffs. And we know the addition of Mark Stone coming back, how they're able to manipulate the cap is genius. And I don't know why other teams don't do this, because they obviously have. I don't think Dallas is going to be able to win one. This could be a sweep out of the Vegas Golden Knights. We know we're going to get the best out of the Dallas Stars, but they weren't able to get it done last night in a high situation felt in last night's game. So the Vegas Golden Knights are going to continue to dominate. Everyone across the playoff picture wants Dallas to take them out, because Vegas just gets better and better every single playoff game they play. I'm going to be riding the Vegas Golden Knights now. I just don't have faith now in Jay. That defense gave him support last night, but Vegas finds a way each and every time.
Yeah, they certainly do. It's still a young franchise by relative terms in professional sports, but Vegas, after winning the Stanley Cup a season ago, shows us that pedigree now in this Stanley Cup postseason in 2024. Joe, they're a co-favorite alongside the Edmonton Oilers at plus 320 to now win the Western Conference. Last night, the first game of 3 that we saw was in Toronto between the Bruins and the Maple Leafs. We changed venue. It was even at 1 game apiece before we headed to Toronto last night. But the Boston Bruins take a 2-1 series lead. Tied at 1-1 entering the third and final stanza. The Bees score 3 goals in that third period to pull away for the 4-2 victory. It was a dead even pick'em last night. Minus 110 both sides on the money line. How did Boston pick up the victory up in Toronto?
We just saw so much out of Swayman in net. This Boston Bruins team had a phenomenal game. Marchand came out so phenomenally strong, and they were able to limit the Toronto Maple Leafs. Now, Toronto does have that issue in net with Samsonov. This is a team that needs to be able to score those goals in a higher scoring game to be able to get the win. But I do think that they could win the next game here and make a series of this because of what Boston is doing with their goaltending. I really do think they should leave Swayman in net and not go back to Omar, but they've been alternating goaltending each and every one of these matchups. So we will see Omar, and Toronto, we know, is able to score on him. So this series is going to go deep. I think Toronto takes the next one, but Swayman, Hawk goaltender, was able to get them that win last night. He had a phenomenal game, and offensively, the Bruins stepped up. Now, these teams are playing so chippy out there. Those penalties are going to come into play. Both of these teams need to stay out of the box.
And by the way, take a look at that series price now. It does flip over to Boston at a minus 275 price, but also the struggles here of the Maple Leafs in the playoffs. You look at guys like Tavares, Marner, and Matthews. Where does that wind up if they get knocked out once again in the first round? But that is one Canadian team to take a look at to win the Stanley Cup at the FanDuel Sportsbook, Joe. They're listed at 28-1. Other teams, the Oilers, 7-1. The Winnipeg Jets, 20-1. Vancouver at 20-1. Is it the Edmonton Oilers the best chance here to lift Lord Stanley Cup for Canada?
I really can't get behind Edmonton as the best Canadian team to be able to do so. I really do think you have to circle the Winnipeg Jets, and you're getting so much more value with them. This team is built to win in the playoffs. They have a great goaltending duo here with Connor Hellebuck and Boussois. Their defense is able to lock down and win lower scoring games. Now they have to start playing their game versus the Colorado Avalanche. This series tied 1-1 apiece going back to Colorado. They cannot sustain high scoring games here and expect to be able to win this series. But I do think this team, offensively, defensively, and in net, have the value here to be able to take the Stanley Cup. You look at Edmonton, and again, it comes down to Skinner in net. I just can't have the faith in them. They do crumble in those situations. We look at Vancouver. Demko is out for the rest of the series versus the Predators. With Casey DeSmith, I don't have the faith there. So the Winnipeg Jets for me in this one, you guys.
Yeah, when you look at Edmonton, 7-1 right now, 4th best price still to win the Stanley Cup, but the only Canadian team in the 7 best prices at 11-1 or shorter to win the Stanley Cup as of this moment in the opening round. Joe, a doubleheader on this Thursday night on the ice, a change of venue where the series favorites at home in their first 2 games of the set held serve on home ice. Now we change from Sunrise to Tampa in the Sunshine State Showdown between Florida and Tampa Bay. And of course, we go to New York, where the Isles will host the Carolina Hurricanes. Again, both road teams entering game number 3 with a 2-0 series lead. Must win for the Bolts, must win for the Isles. Of those two teams, who has a better shot of winning their first game of the series tonight?
It's definitely the Tampa Bay Lightning. You look at them here and they have to contain this game with the Florida Panthers and start playing their own game. They've allowed the Panthers to control that puck out there, control the movement. But I do think the Lightning, this team is so phenomenally strong with Andrei Vasilevskiy and how tight these games have been, have every opportunity of getting the win tonight, especially with Sam Bennett out for the Florida Panthers. He is going to be out at least this game. It looks like a couple. And I think the Lightning will be able to get this series under control here. This is a do or die situation. And then when we look at the New York Islanders, I tell you, this team is in trouble here. Sorokin, though, will be getting the start in net and not Varlamov. Now, he's been extremely strong versus the Carolina Hurricanes in his playoff career. So I do think this one stays under that total of 5.5. But you look at the Canes, this team is so phenomenally strong on both sides of the puck. And Frederick Anderson has just been so solid in net. It's going to be a hard one for the Islanders. I have most faith in the Lightning tonight to be able to get a win at home.
Yeah, New York, a home underdog at plus 140 inside UBS Arena out on the island. The Lightning, a very slight home favorite against the Panthers, minus 115, the money line number, minus 104 on the other side for Florida. Joe Madden, thank you so much. What a great breakdown it was all across the ice, looking back on last night and previewing this Thursday as well. We go to the NBA up next here on the Early Line.
People that bashed him will be eating their words this year.
Pretty heavily favored to be a first-round pick, minus 400 earlier this week. But that's not the surprise.
If you're drafting J.J. McCarthy in the first half of the first round, you clearly believe not only is he a starter, he's going to be your starter for years to come. But
a popular bet was under 3.5 wide receivers in the first round.
The tape doesn't lie, baby.
Only on SportsGrid.
So I turned it off. I got my sweat done, and I'm leaving. Taking my money. I'm going home, and I don't want to talk to you the rest.
Oh, yes!
There it is.
6-3. Catch the over. The over is hit. The Padres are our heroes.
That's how we end the show. That's how we end the show.
Oh, what? Let's just sign off. Let's just call it a show.
In-game live, prime time, only on SportsGrid.
I think they're looking for a space where they can be comfortable, perhaps make some NIL money in the process, but be better set up long-term as opposed to it being 1 year jumping around.
You want to kind of get your core players that have been there a couple of years, and then go get the high-profile recruit, and then supplement at the transfer portal.
Inside the transfer portal, only on SportsGrid.
Game Time had 35 in the first half, Cam. And then, of course, he did not have another point the rest of the game.
Lillard's, it's playoff game time. This guy will show up. He will hit shots. Indiana, you better respond here because I'll tell you, that's a bad, bad, bad loss. We were wrong, Carver. Like, hey, I admit, I was on the Pelicans. This game, I lost.
Pharrell Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid.
It's a Thursday on the early line. It's draft night. We'll have some best bets for the 2024 NFL draft in the opening round tonight in Detroit on the other side. But it's also a triple header on this Thursday of NBA playoff action. For the first time in this NBA playoff run, we change venues. To Philadelphia, we go. To Los Angeles, we go. To Orlando, we go. And we actually go in reverse chronological order as we start in LA with the game out in the Western Conference. Game number 3 between the Lakers and the Nuggets, the reigning champs, holding serve on their home floor. The Jamal Murray buzzer beater to win game number 2. And Denver takes a 2-0 series advantage into LA tonight. It's a pick'em. It's minus 108 on both sides. The Lakers opened up as a very slight favorite. Now it's dead even. Minus 108, minus 108. So who wins game number 3 tonight in the City of Angels?
3 games tonight, 2 teams coming in at home with gut-punching losses in game number 2. That's the Philadelphia 76ers, and that's the Lakers.
Yeah.
But if you are looking to bet on a team, let's just say again, we'll get to the Sixers game in a minute. Let's focus on the Lakers. This is the game you have to win. You're human beings here. You go down 0-3, you know the deal. It's like, dude, why are we even going back to Denver? Let's just take a loss in game number 4 here in LA so we don't have to get on a plane and waste our time in game number 5 only to be beat there. Having said that, the Denver Nuggets' dominance over the Lakers is pretty incredible because this is just like, well, you know what, Ben? We're always healthy, and LeBron James and Anthony Davis miss every game. That's not the case. Like, you played them in a high-pressure situation last year in the playoffs where it was for, hey, look, it's going to go to the NBA Finals, and the Denver Nuggets look like, oh, yeah, we're here every single year, and we win multiple championships. Not like LeBron James has never been to the NBA Finals. He's been to a ton of those here, but they still won out. Regular season, 3 straight wins. Playoffs now, 2 straight wins. What changes? Nothing. Unless Nikola Jokic fouls out of the game in the first half or there's devastating injuries, you can't tell me right now you're not looking at the Denver Nuggets saying, pick them, just sign me up. I don't care about the handicap. I don't care about the kitchen sink type game because, quite frankly, I actually like the Lakers to win. But based on what at this point? Is it shooting? It's, Ben, I want the Lakers to get to a good start. Let's get up to a 20-point lead and win. Yeah, you did that and you lost to the game. You actually had the 10-point lead entering into the fourth quarter and you lost that game. And now you're super angry about the refs and the officials. So there's a lot more going on around. I just look at the game tonight and I'll be again backing the public side, which is the Nuggets. A pick'em game between these two teams. We've seen this play out time and time and time again, Ben.
So as JY said, he loves Denver in the second half. The Nuggets bounce back in the second half of game number 2. It's also a dead even money line pick for the second, minus 110 for Denver, minus 110 for LA, or that in-game live perspective for game number 3 tonight in Los Angeles. One of my favorite things, Donnie, when you get to the playoffs is not only the drastic odds shift that you will see based on one individual result for a playoff series, but what it means for the odds, game to game to game. Both game 1 and 2 in the Mile High City stayed well under their pregame numbers. This total opened up overnight at 221. It is now down to 217. This thing is working its way down with both totals going well under. Again, 101.99, courtesy of the Jamal Murray game winner at the buzzer just a few nights ago in Denver. If Mike Breen was calling that game, he probably would have hit a double bang. But he did so when Donnie's guy, Tay-Tay, put the dagger into Donnie's team, the Philadelphia 76ers, in game number 2 of this series inside Madison Square Garden. But in MSG, we are no longer. We go to the Wells Fargo Center tonight in Philadelphia, where the Sixers are a 5-point home favorite, total at 203.5. Of course, DRS, if you're down 0-2 in a series and you change venues and now you're on your own home floor or home ice or whatever it is a must-win, can't-lose game. Philly needs to win. How do the Sixers get it done?
Yeah, this is interesting because you are looking at that line opening at minus 2.5 for the Sixers, and an avalanche came in and pushed that number to 5. We'll see where it goes because other outlets, Ben, actually reporting 5.5s back right now, which is pretty impressive. And that tells you that's a stone-cold Sixer line. You watched the first 2 games, right? And you said to yourself, all right, the Knicks are good, but JY was on with us, and rightfully so. This could easily be 2-0 Sixers moving back to Philadelphia, but it's not 2-0 Philadelphia Sixers. It's 2-0 Knicks. So Tibbs coming in, I'm sure he's not telling his team, hey, guys, man, got lucky in those first 2 games, no big deal. Take it easy in games 3 and 4. We'll get back to the Garden and handle our business. No, you want to put your foot down immediately on this series, which means beating the Philadelphia 76ers. And also, Sixers coming in hot because they felt that they got robbed in the final minute, and the NBA just goes, You know, Ben, you did get robbed. So what? You're down 0-2 and see what you can do with it. Now, having said that, I think the Sixers do win this game. But here's what I'm worried about from a Sixers backer. Jalen Brunson has been, has been building Empire State Building's worth of bricks with how many times he's shooting here. And you say, well, why is that important? Well, the Knicks are getting by with Brunson not doing anything basically on offense. Now, forget about the points.
Yep.
It's one thing if you're like, hey, I'm 10 of 14 every night, not 8 of 25. Sooner or later, Jalen Brunson's going to get it going. And in the city that he played in with Villanova, you know he's going to want to do that in this game. So if I'm looking from an output and say, forget about betting the New York Knicks, I do think this is a Jalen Brunson game because he can score a lot of points and hit his total, Ben, without the Philadelphia 76ers, or excuse me, without his team beating the Sixers. But he can't have another performance where it's brick, 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 brick. As soon as that catches up to you, the Sixers will win by double digits. So for me tonight, it's really a Brunson game. I think he plays well, but I do think the Sixers win.
28.5 is the points prop for Brunson, who has scored at least 22 in each of New York's victories here to start off this series, but not efficiently. 8 of 29 in game number 2, 8 of 26 in game number 1. At least 6 dimes, though, for Brunson and 7 boards in each of these first 2 games. I expect Jalen Brunson to score. In fact, I expect a lot of people to score tonight. We talk about the changing of the markets and the movement in the odds. I'm not sure why the total for this one has worked its way down. Playoff basketball, you start the first few games of the opening round of these series, and you have numbers that just because of the intensity and the defensive energy stay under. But game number 1 went over 208.5. Game number 2 stayed under, but just by a point and a hook. And this total has dropped, at least at open, by 4.5 points, now back up to 203.5. I like the over tonight in Philadelphia of 203 and a hook between the 76ers and the Knicks. We'll look at the opening game of the tripleheader in Orlando between the Magic and the Cavs on the other side and give you a best bet for this Thursday. Up next on the early line.
People that bashed him will be eating their words this year.
Pretty heavily favored to be a first-round pick, minus 400 earlier this week. But that's not the surprise.
If you're drafting J.J. McCarthy in the first half of the first round, you clearly believe not only is he a starter, he's going to be your starter for years to come. But
a popular bet was under 3.5 wide receivers in the first round.
The tape doesn't lie, baby.
Only on SportsGrid.
So I turned it off. I got my sweat done, and I'm leaving. I'm taking my money. I'm going home, and I don't want to talk to you the rest.
Oh, yes!
There it is.
6-3. Catch the over. The over is hit. The Padres are our heroes.
That's how we end the show. That's how we end the show.
Oh, what? Let's just sign off. Let's just call it a show.
In-game live, prime time, only on SportsGrid.
I think they're looking for a space where they can be comfortable, perhaps make some NIL money in the process, but be better set up long-term as opposed to it being 1 year jumping around.
You want to kind of get your core players that have been here a couple of years and then go get the high-profile recruit and then supplement at the transfer portal.
Inside the transfer portal, only on SportsGrid.
Game Time had 35 in the first half, Cam. And then, of course, he did not have another point the rest of the game.
Lillard's, it's playoff game time. This guy will show up. He will hit shots. Indiana, you better respond here because I'll tell you, that's a bad, bad, bad loss. We were wrong, Carver. Like, hey, I admit, I was on the Pelicans. This game, I lost.
Pharrell Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid.
A triple header of NBA playoff action on this Thursday. That means 3 games. And in all 3 scenarios, the road team with a change of venue now has a 2-0 series lead. Cleveland heads to Orlando tonight to take on the Magic. The Cavs at home absolutely hammering Orlando, winning and covering in both of the opening 2 games of this set. Orlando has yet to score 90 points. Neither team has scored 100. Both of the totals well under, reflected in our numbers tonight. 2.5-point spread in favor of the Magic. Now at home in game number 3, the over-under, 201 and a hook. It opened at 199.5. It is up by 2 points. Orlando needs this win. Do they get it tonight at home?
Yeah, I took a best bet a couple nights ago there on the under in the Magic Cleveland game, and it was absolutely an easy winner here. And I got a bad number, 203.5, and it rose to 206 by game time. Still didn't even come close because the Orlando Magic can't score 100 points. So when I look at this game and say, okay, it's back up to 201.5, I still like the under, and that's astronomically low. It's ridiculous that an NBA game is going to be priced around 200 points, but that's what you're getting here because the Cleveland Cavaliers know Orlando can't score. So if the Cavaliers bring their B game on offense, they should be able to handle business. They did it twice. And again, changing of venues is big. And we understand that game number 3, when you're down 0-2, your season is on the line. You tend to give it every single effort you can possibly do on offense and on defense. But I just don't think it stacks up here. And interesting, though, FanDuel opened up this line as a minus 2.5-point favorite for the Cavaliers, and that's swung completely around to minus 2.5 for the Orlando Magic. I still do like the dog and this environment for the Cavaliers. But again, a better bet in this game, give me under 201.5 again. They just don't, both teams don't want to go up tempo, and one team really struggles to score in the half-court set. That's the Magic. I'll take the under again.
Cleveland hasn't been a great underdog this year, 14-15 against the spread. There is no better home favorite this season than Orlando, a 76% cover percentage, 19-6 against the number. Their team total tonight is 101.5. 101.5. They have yet to score more than 86 so far in this opening round playoff series against Cleveland. So, those are the 3 games that we have in the NBA tonight. Doubleheader in the NHL as well, Stanley Cup playoff action. Around Major League Baseball, a bunch of afternoon day baseball on this Thursday. And round number 1, night number 1 in Detroit of the 2024 NFL Draft. So before we say farewell and before we say goodbye, it is time for a best bet on this Thursday. It's time for bye, bye, bye. DRS, what tickles the fancy on this Thursday with a plethora of options to wager on?
Let's take a prop bet here. We're going to go to the city of brotherly love, the New York Knicks taking on the Philadelphia 76ers. And you know me, Ben, I love secondary options here. Now, we're hearing a lot from the city of Philadelphia, being quite upset. Villanova, who is not a city team here in Philadelphia, did post a nice little highlight reel of how excited they were for their Villanova Wildcats doing well. That did not go over well in the city, and also maybe particularly with Kyle Lowry, who, yes, is a 38-year-old. Yes, he is 38 years old. He has played well for the Sixers down the stretch. He is going to make more than 2 3-point shots tonight. So over 1.5 3-point shots made at a minus 115 price for Lowry. Back-to-back games against the Knicks, he made at least 2. I look for that forward to come tonight as well.
Yeah, DRS, I love the look. Philadelphia needs to win this game tonight. They're a 5-point home favorite. Total on the rise, now an over-under of 204. One of my favorite bets in this game is something that stood out to me. Joel Embiid is taken at least 8 threes in each of the first 2 games of this series. He's only made 2, but he's taken 8 at least. The volume is there. 2+ made threes is minus 150. 3+ made triples for Joel Embiid in game number 3 is plus 230. I think he could stack them up tonight. But I go to the 2024 NFL Draft. It's going to be a big night for the big fellas up front. Those hog mollies, those O-linemen, they are going to hear their name called early and often. And laying minus 192 of juice might feel like a hefty wager. But it's not hefty if you win. And if you win, you profit still. And if there was an alt market, I'd bet over 11.5 O-linemen taken in the first round of the 2024 NFL Draft. I can't. So I go over 9.5 for those O-linemen tonight. Again, a big night DRS for the big fellas.
Absolutely. And the alt market for alt as an offensive lineman, it just goes easily together tonight. Cash in the bag. The draft is tonight. So much good sporting options to look forward to. And as you know, Ben, where's the place to be? It's the SportsGrid Network. This is what we do, people.
Amen. Hey, I'll see you tomorrow in person, live on a Friday morning, recapping the draft and everything we're seeing in the postseason on the early line, starting at 8 a.m. Eastern time. He's Donnie. I'm Ben. We'll talk to you tomorrow on a Friday.